Hello and welcome to StealthEX cryptocurrency interview series. This is the second interview in our kind of little collaboration with our friendly projects here. And I'm Maria, I'm the CMO of StealthEX, and today we're joined by Kyn from TomoChain, and welcome. Glad to have you here.
Thank you, Maria. Oh, great to be here as well, and I'm honored to be your second guest on this series. That's pretty exciting.
Yeah, this is a very, very young project, so it's awesome that you could join us. And first of all, probably you can introduce yourself, what you do yourself, what's your role in Tomo, and kind of how it all got started for you personally.
Sure, absolutely. So yeah, my name is Kyn Chaturvedi. I'm the Chief Business Development Officer at TomoChain. So I basically handle all of the existing business development deals, partnerships, exchange listings, some of our services work that we do, and kind of work on the high-level strategy, as well as aiding our marketing team as well with narrative and messaging and things like that. For me, my personal story, my background is actually in game development. So I spent most of my career there as my core passion. And I basically I got exposure to cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin as early as 2010. And at the time, I think as many were exposed to at the time, thought it's, how can you create something like this? How can you create, money out of nothing, right? So I didn't believe in it. But every year I kept seeing news about it again and again. And I was like, what is this thing? How is it not dead yet? And finally, when it came to around 2013, I was like, all right, I got to pay attention to what this thing is. Why is it relevant? And I think that the messaging and the power of the idea of decentralized money, where no single authority is in control, where it is entirely distributed around the world, and where it really, when we think of the internet, how it connected people together, the one thing we didn't have was an internet native money. And this is kind of what it has enabled. It's enabled all of us from all over the world to work together towards a common purpose in many ways. I mean, the financial system really ties everybody together. And in this way, it really was, in a sense, the people's money. So that got me very interested. I decided to invest around early 2014 on the way down. So I wasn't very happy with my investment choice at the time. But I think as the years went on, I held, and I just continued to get more enamored. And I think around 2016 is when I really just super dived in and I felt like I was doing my PhD in it. Eventually, after a couple of years, I noticed a project, TomoChain, and I became a very early investor in the project. I was a big believer in what they were trying to do at the time. I was a part of the community for about a year and a half. I launched my own validators on TomoChain network. I was part of the community, and eventually I got an amazing opportunity to join the company as heading up their business development. My background has been as an entrepreneur, heading up marketing, heading up business development, operations, and everything. So this was an amazing opportunity. It became my second passion after gaming. So I took it, and I've been incredibly excited with the work that we've been doing 18 months since I joined, 20 months at this point. It's been so much fun. And I think what you notice is that people in this particular space come from all walks of life, all different backgrounds, having all different ways of getting in. And so it's fun, honestly, to be able to meet people like you and others in the space who just come from just wacky different backgrounds. And we all come together for a particular purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree to that, because for me, the cryptocurrency space, when I joined, it was so versatile and so strangely connected at the same time, because all the people have their own kind of common goals and kind of common criteria on how everything should work. So for you, it was the message of this decentralization, of connecting people who are probably would never meet, and the community that brought you into cryptocurrency kind of. So it was not pure financial goal, for example.
Yeah, it wasn't. I think everyone kind of initially may jump in to say, hey, let me invest and maybe make a quick buck. Everyone gets in from that. But then it was really the messaging of how it works. And, today, actually, even before I joined TomoChain, with the work that I was doing, I ended up paying my contractors in cryptocurrency, which is faster than using PayPal or bank transfers. It was much more inexpensive. It made a lot of sense. And that's kind of where it was like, you know what, there is a future in this, because people were able to either keep it in their wallets, or they could, go to the off ramp and deposit into their bank accounts. So it was like, this is the way to do commerce in the future, right? This is really connecting us. So yeah, that was really when it hit a spark for me.
Yeah, that's great. But TomoChain, for example, it has a very strong and active community too. So do you translate your kind of vibes into the working with marketing for Tomo, into kind of all this space as well? And how does it all correlate with your personal kind of values and goals?
Sure, absolutely. So I think the reason I was so enamored with TomoChain, so TomoChain is a public blockchain. It came about in early 2018. That was the time we did our ICO. We launched into mainnet at the end of 2018. It's an EVM compatible blockchain, 2000 TPS, 2-second block time, near zero gas fees. So it's incredibly scalable, incredibly fast and efficient. Now, that in of itself wasn't the only interesting element for me, of course. The thing about this was that the focus of TomoChain was about, at the time, we called open finance, as we put it in the white paper, which is called decentralized finance today. The idea was enabling anybody and everyone to be able to do financial transactions with one another, to basically have commerce in a way where you don't have friction, and in a way where blockchain is actually an invisible technology. So, that way what happens is no matter where you travel around the world, the idea is you'll always be able to make a payment or transfer money to other parties. That was a basic fundamental tenet of kind of how they started, how TomoChain began, and in a scalable fashion, right? Easy to use. And the invisible aspect was really what I was looking at, because the thing is, though within the crypto space, within blockchain, all of us are very passionate. But the big problem is that there's that barrier. How do you get to your mom and dads? How do you get to your grandmas and grandpas? How do you get them to actually start using it? Not just, educating them about how to buy it and hold it as an investment, actually use the technology. And that is what got me hooked. And, this is kind of, and I'll talk more about it in terms of things that we've done in order to enable blockchain to be an invisible technology, like you would think of any other form of tech that we use. Anything's powering the internet today. Our ISPs, we don't really think about how data is routed, across the internet. How is this video conferencing call is actually working? We don't care. We don't think about it at all. And that's kind of the idea behind blockchain and why I was excited by it. So to tell you a little bit more about TomoChain, so over the last couple of years, since we launched into mainnet, our focus again has been really about opening up finance, opening up blockchain use to the masses. So there were 3 core protocols that we focused on during that time. The first one is probably the most successful one that we've had, which is called Tomo Z. What it basically is, when you're going to a coffee shop, right? And let's say you want to pay with USDT. You have an Ethereum wallet, you have USDT, and let's just assume that the other party is willing to accept your crypto. Now, one of the core problems is, even if I have that, I want to pay 5 USDT. In what country in the world do you have to hold 2 currencies? One is your core currency, your USDT, and the second is a gas fee, Ethereum in this case, to pay it. That level of friction, you don't see that anywhere, right? We typically take out our credit card, debit card, we have cash, and we just pay. That's how it should be. Now, in the case of this, right, if someone actually has to do this, not only do they have to top up on Ethereum for paying gas fees and you have USDT, but then you also have the issue of when I pay for my cup of coffee, there's a queue to wait, you order, then you say I'm going to pay, and then there's probably going to be a queue where you have to wait for a transaction fee. The transaction to actually go through, right? It's too slow. And that doesn't make any sense. That's not going to work. What Tomo Z does is it hides, number one, it hides that gas fee entirely. So when you use USDT on TomoChain, the gas fee is paid in USDT. You don't have to hold Tomo. So immediately you remove that entire friction point. So now you can actually just use that. And because of this particular feature where you can pay gas fees in the token itself, it has enabled so many businesses to actually utilize TomoChain technology with their existing customer base. And one of the coolest examples, I can't talk about the name yet because it's under NDA, but there is a company in Japan that has issued their own token. It's a virtual currency token like you would have in a game or whatever it might be. You pay for it using yen. And then that token is used to pay for basically buying and selling of products within a mobile application. And this virtual currency is, the end users don't even know it's blockchain technology. It's using this Tomo Z tech, where they're just buying and selling, and it's using blockchain to secure it. So everything is on the ledger, everything's traceable, everything's trackable. But the end user doesn't even know it's blockchain tech. And that was we launched this thing about 2 months ago with this company, and they've already done some 200,000 transactions within that time across thousands of users, which is very cool, mass market product. We also enabled another company called Coin98, which is a Vietnamese company. They're focused on the investor group in Vietnam. They launched a mobile application. They issued their own token called C98 for Coin98. And they scaled up their user base to 100,000 users who were all using this token. And again, because they didn't have to know they were on the TomoChain blockchain. And that's the key point. So I think, again, kind of exemplifying, or emphasizing about the idea of removing friction from the end user so they don't have to think about the tech. So that was the first thing that we did. The second thing we did was we launched a decentralized exchange protocol. So anyone can launch their own decentralized exchange, order book exchange, in 5 minutes. Like, you don't have to know much at all to be able to launch one of these things. And so it has allowed for, we have over a dozen DEXs using this thing, where we pool all the liquidity into a single order book. So everyone shares the same order book. You could bring on your own users, your own customers, your own users to trade, but the common pool is shared. And again, there's no gas fee. So what that has allowed is for Ethereum-based tokens to, say, enter into our blockchain, and they can be traded back and forth. End users just have to have MetaMask. And even though they're using TomoChain, we wrap their tokens, they're trading with those tokens as a wrapped token on TomoChain. They deposit, they withdraw back into the Ethereum network. But again, no Tomo, no gas fees. However, in the background, Tomo is being used to pay our validator network. But this is, I guess I've given you a couple of examples, but just to emphasize the way in which our philosophy about how blockchain should be used.
This is very interesting, because usually all the projects kind of emphasize how blockchain is very important. So there's a lot of focus on this word blockchain as such. This is like blockchain this, blockchain that, but you're actually telling that eliminating this highlight and eliminating this focus kind of makes it easier, because the users stop thinking about it and they just use the technology but don't go somewhere very deep. So how was it? Because with Tomo Z, the fact that you can pay, so this is a very real world example, because you pay for things, and this is how everything works. So credit cards, debit cards, all the examples that you gave, the payment systems, we don't really, that's true. We don't really think how they work, and it's not important for average people. But when you use cryptocurrency, there is still this feeling that, okay, this is a ledger, there's some data in the blocks. We all know that for some reason, even the people who just started and want to use it for payments. But how did you get to the idea that this is the application that's the most important part, not this emphasis on the inside things? Because this is unusual.
Sure. So I think part of this goes back to the fact that all of the executives at TomoChain were actually all, I think the average age is over 35 at this point. We've all come from different industries. We've worked in different businesses, investment banking. For me, it's been game design, game development, and management consulting. Our founder is a PhD in economics. So there's a lot of thought that's been put into kind of what our world was like before blockchain, as an employee or as an entrepreneur, and how we reached out to our customer base. How do we grow our customer base? To when we're actually working in blockchain, the same rules basically apply. And I think what happens often is that, which is actually a good thing. I mean, blockchain is a place to experiment. And so there are amazing experiments going on from all different walks of life, from people who are in college, high school, and just graduates. There's a lot of research happening. For us, we're a startup. A startup needs to have cash flows. A startup needs to think about how to attract customers. How do we generate revenue? How do we maintain our business? How do we make sure that each of our employees continue to be employed, right? We want this to be here for the long term. So it comes from that. And it comes from saying, how do I reach my customer? How do I get my customer to use this thing? Now, so it started from that and saying, okay, if the biggest problem of reaching mass market is these points of friction, let's solve that, because I want to be the first one to have, millions of users using my blockchain. That's the only way we're going to be successful. That's how we're going to be able to generate additional revenues and to be able to grow. That's where it started from. Now, so the idea of kind of going down this route actually came about right after the white paper. This was actually there are 3 protocols, layer 1 protocols we call them, and it started at that particular point. Saying this is how we're going to operate. These are the issues that we're going to face now. And as a result of that, again, being more customer focused and focusing on bringing on businesses, we also chose to not go. Typically most blockchains, especially the larger ones, have really sizable grant funds, and there's a lot of testing that goes on. There are a lot of hackathons, and they try to bring on individual developers onto their blockchain and encourage them to develop. We did not take the same approach. We did test things out with hackathons and things like that, but our approach was very different. And one of the reasons for that is because we raised $8.5 million in our ICO in early 2018. We were born in a bear market. We had to figure out how to survive, and we knew we couldn't just spend unless we knew we were going to get traction. So what we did, again, thinking of the long-term focus of TomoChain as a business, we said, let's go after other businesses which actually have an existing customer base. Individual developers, maybe they may come up with really cool ideas, but can they get traction? And is it worth investing in individual developers to see if maybe they come upon a really cool idea? We didn't have the funding to do that. And we didn't think it was a smart way of using funding. So we went after business, which is why, like the example I gave you with Coin98, we also brought on the largest Ethereum wallet owner from Japan. They're called Bakur. And they decided to migrate over to TomoChain entirely. So they've launched a social wallet. They brought their NFT marketplace over to TomoChain. They brought their dApps over to TomoChain, and they have an existing install base. So we're able to work with companies like that because they already know how to operate a business, right? We're just helping to enable them. And we decided to also, though TomoChain as a blockchain is decentralized as much as they can get, we were also the core developers of it. And we also know that when a business wants to use your blockchain or any technology, they require direct client support. They need service, right? They need to have someone to talk to help them out. These help desks are not necessarily always available readily 24/7. If you're developing on some of the other, larger chains, perhaps it's a little more challenging to find that. So we were trying to kind of, again, bridging the gap between mainstream businesses and blockchain. How do you do that? Well, again, focus on the client, focus on the customer, help them out, right? And attract those that do have existing customers and customers of their own, clients of their own, users of their own. So that's how we've been able to scale in a very different way than many of the other blockchains. And that mentality, again, comes from the fact that, we come from other walks of life before blockchain. And so we bring that thought process into this business.
Do you think of TomoChain more as a tool when you present it to businesses, for example? Like you said, this wallet from Japan, they kind of were looking for how to execute things. So, and you come and you say, hello, we have the right technology for you to use, and this is how it works. So do you present it as kind of like this multi-tool that can help in building your business and reaching more clients and making things easier and so on?
Sure. So the one thing we don't do hard sales. So, we don't put together like a big presentation and walk up to walk up to a door and say, hey, check it out, check out what we're doing, right? It never works that way. The approach really has been through our existing network. Typically within any nascent industry, right? Any major partnership or minor partnership, it doesn't just happen because you just happen to have the best product there. It's a combination of good product and a good network. So we were able to build a relationship with, so these people, the reason we know, like I keep talking about Japan, is because TomoChain, we are, give you a little background, we are a team of 40 core developers, our entire team based out of Hanoi, Vietnam. We have an extension of about 20 people in our enterprise business. Part of the enterprise business was located in Tokyo, Japan. So we were able to get access, and the people heading that up already had plenty of development experience from a services side with clients in Japan. So that allowed us to tap into that market because even in Japan and Asian countries, a lot of these new developments are based off of trust. So again, we were able to tap into that network, and there were plenty of companies looking to innovate. And so that's kind of how these conversations begin. Then from there, it's really about, again, it took months. I mean, we were constantly just kind of like having initial conversations, and then we'd ping each other every few weeks, and just constantly building that relationship up until they finally decided, in this case, Bakur, that they're going to migrate. And it was many, many months, of just constantly going back and forth on this. And that's how most of our relationships honestly formed. It was in that manner. So now, taking this as an example of what has been done, yes, now we can capture it into a document and then take it with us if we want to do a hard sale. And so now we can do that, right? Because we have that first case study. But that's kind of the approach that we took in order to kind of get this done. And that's how we generally, for when we're trying to breach new markets, new industries, that's the approach we take. It's really through our network.
Yeah, and actually, I have one more question about like the importance of things about kind of the general issues of blockchain and what's the general buzzwords. Let's put it this way. So there is TomoZ that focuses on enabling payments and this easy transactions, and there is DEX, but also you work on privacy, for example. So there's TomoP, as far as I know. And this is one of the things that's very popular in general in blockchain. Has been a buzzword for a very long time. And how do you get to this field as well? And what are your works? And
Sure. Absolutely, yeah. Well studied for sure. So yes, so we had 3 layer 1 protocols that we were intending to develop. One was TomoZ, one was TomoX, as you just mentioned, and last is finally, yes, TomoP. So TomoP stands for privacy, and of course, and it is our privacy suite. So the idea behind TomoP is to enable the fastest privacy sends that you can have. So you can send with TomoP, which is going to be, we're planning to enable it on mainnet soon. We have it on our testnet right now. Essentially, it allows for private sends of Tomo and soon, and eventually other TomoChain-based tokens to be done within 4 seconds flat. It'll be the fastest sends you can have. But not just that, we call it a suite because it also is intended to be integrated into applications or dApps, which will allow for, say, private transactions within an app. So, the simplest example I always give is private staking, right? So you can stake we're a proof of stake voting consensus, so we can do staking on our masternodes, and this is one way of being able to do staking. Perhaps you can do private staking, but beyond that. So integration into dApps, and then beyond that, we're going to be issuing a new type of token, which is going to be a purely private token. So that basically is similar to, say, Monero, but anyone can issue them on the TomoChain network using this particular protocol, TomoP. And what this can enable, it can enable any business to be able to create their own consumer-centric token, say for payment. Let's say think of it like a PayPal of sorts, and that could be utilized now amongst their user base. Now, of course, there are regulatory concerns. So what we've done is ensure that there is regulatory compliance built in for all of this. There is a private view key. So that way, what that basically means is that if you decide to, you can have all the transactions audited. You can share this key with an auditor, and they can actually look into the network and say, okay, I know which wallet addresses we're transacting. And so that way what happens is you can have that transparency when you need it, but on the outside, for someone that's on the outside of the public blockchain trying to look at our scanning through the blockchain transactional data, they won't know who these individuals are. So we do enable that. So TomoP, officially what we did was a couple weeks ago, actually it's been enabled as of now, is that we did another mainnet upgrade. And that mainnet upgrade that we've just done this past week and a half actually, it actually includes all the TomoP code base. We just haven't activated it yet, but it's there. So we're planning to activate that over the next couple of months or so. Right now, we're in a weird situation in the regulatory side of things where there's a lot of sensitivity to anything privacy related. And so we're making sure that we kind of launch at the right time. One of the key examples is, there have been a number of reports about privacy coins, and what happens is any of the tokens that are clubbed together end up getting delisted. Dash is one of the core examples of that, which has faced a lot of delisting, most recently on Bittrex. And the funny thing is that Dash is just like basically Bitcoin. It's a public ledger-based, protocol, and when you send Dash, it's just like sending Bitcoin basically. There's nothing private about it. What it can use is, it can utilize any of these mixers that any public blockchain can use, right? That's basically what its level of privacy. There's nothing truly private about it. However, they got into some problems because a number of years ago, after they launched, they were talking about how you could do, private sends, and that branding just harmed them so much. And so that's, even though they're not Monero, they're and even Zcash, which you have the ability to turn on and off the privacy essentially, they're not that either. But that's the problem. So we're being very cautious with kind of how we approach the launch of TomoP. But the nice thing is it's done. It's there when we do launch. I think that it's going to complete our trifecta of protocols, layer 1 protocols, and it's going to be pretty cool with what you can do across all 3 of these. But we definitely think that privacy is going to be an important aspect moving forward. It's just a matter of how do you deal with the regulations that are coming in and just the public view or even the government view of privacy on the blockchain.
How do you think is it possible to generally avoid these problems with regulations? Because as you mentioned that many privacy coins and projects are facing giant troubles for the fact that they're private. So they're doing what they're supposed to do, but kind of nobody likes that. And how do you think is it possible to kind of reach this consensus between regulators, between projects? What are the necessary steps for it, and whether it's possible to just calm this storm down and for privacy coins to live kind of their own perfect happy life?
Sure. So, as regulations being formed around this, there are a couple, like FinCEN, basically, there are 2 ways in which they kind of look at this privacy-based transactions. And that's one thing I was looking at, is that, and even like the New York Bit license, how do you deal with privacy coins? So for one thing, there are 2 things that you have to look at. One is, are you a money transmitter? Are you a service enabling the money transmission in a private manner? Or are you providing the technology to enable others to be able to utilize it, but you're not managing it yourself, right? That is a core difference. If we're a money transmitter as a private company, then it becomes much more challenging. However, if there's a technology that is basically provided that others can use, but we're not directly managing the entire process of it as a company, then the regulation is a little more friendly there. It's the same issue with, say, guys like Uniswap, right? Is Uniswap a money transmitter? And for them, they said they're not. They provide a technology, and it just basically has allowed all of these projects to be able to utilize their service as an AMM, right? So people can trade on it, but they themselves don't control it at all. And that's kind of their philosophy. So I think of this in a similar manner, in that TomoChain, though we are the primary developer, we want to be a developer for the TomoChain blockchain, including all of these protocols, right? We provide it, the community can choose to use it, they can choose not to use it, but we don't want to be managing those funds, so to speak, that go through it. We're not the ones that are saying, we're not the money transmitter here. So I think that's part of kind of the thought process for how do you manage a regulatory environment like this. The second part is, like I said earlier, it's sort of kind of waiting it out a little bit and just kind of getting a gist for where these regulations are going. Because, the last thing you want to do is to close yourself off from a particular market just because you have a feature, whether or not it's going to be used, but, it's something you have to be cautious with. But so part of it is, kind of understanding the existing regulatory schemas. And the other thing is kind of waiting a little bit to understand kind of how the regulations take shape.
Yeah, of course. And this is very interesting just to see the space develop and kind of grow into these regulations and start working with them in a more kind of elaborate manner than just refusing to work or just being closed down and delisted or all these things. So TomoP will be privacy by default, basically. It will not be kind of here, there, private, not
so
private.
You can think of So you can think of TomoP, it's sort of like a gateway, so you can choose to use it or you can choose not to use it, right? So if you want to send Tomo privately, you can then utilize the feature TomoP and then send your tokens privately. Or if you choose not to do that, you can just bypass it entirely. But again, yeah, what we will, the idea is also down the road, we do want to introduce a private only token that you can also have if you choose to issue it. But that's, again, kind of down the road. But it'll be a feature. It's not going to turn the entire blockchain private. But this is, but in terms of TomoP, the other reason why we think it's important is not just protecting individual privacy on the blockchain, but when we think about, so part of the business that we also do is enterprise focus. So I've been talking a lot about the public blockchain side of development, but we also have an enterprise division. As I briefly mentioned, we have like a 20-man team plus, which focuses on enterprise. And we've been doing a number of pilots over the last couple of years with various companies from automotive, healthcare, food. And one of the key problems that we always end up noticing is that many of them don't want to use public blockchain. They often want to use a private blockchain because they're typically accustomed to being in control of everything that they're doing, right? Their entire infrastructure. So the idea of letting that go and trusting the security of a public blockchain is a bit scary. Second thing is, yeah, they don't really like the idea of all their transactions being transparent on the blockchain. They want something to hide that, to shield that. It's not good for that. It's not good for them. Not good for the competitor. Not good in terms of competition. You don't want your competition to know what's going on. So that's the other reason why public blockchain often becomes a challenge. So TomoP also, when I was talking about integration to dApps, it also means that you can also enable private-based features to help major businesses that want to utilize the security of a public blockchain and have the advantage of privacy, which has been missing a lot, right? Which is why they use private blockchains typically. And what we've noticed is with a number of our clients, most of them, yes, they'd like to go with private blockchains, but then those who are asking for public blockchains, like Ethereum, sometimes often comes up. They will say renege and say no, don't want it because they don't have that privacy. When we talk about TomoChain, they love it because it's cheap, fast, and but then again, it's like, oh, but can't be private. So that's a problem. So that's kind of where we're starting to see that this feature is going to be important. And on the enterprise side, is another reason why we recently acquired another blockchain called Lition. So Lition it's based out of Germany. The team was based out of Germany, and it's a sidechain solution on Ethereum. And what the advantage of Lition is that not only is it scalable, but it is GDPR compliant. So it basically allows for you can actually have privacy on it, and it actually has deletable data on its sidechain. So that allows for the ability to, again, mask the identity, transaction, make everything anonymous, and you can also even remove the information if need be on the Lition sidechain. So this feature is also quite attractive. Its initial intended use case is for energy transactions out of Germany. But the other case that we're looking at is utilizing this for things like CBDCs, for central bank digital currencies, because it has the same functionality and features that many of these banks and these central banks are looking for. Whereas at the same time, you do get the security of the Ethereum blockchain in this case. So it's another angle for enterprise businesses. So we added them to our suite of enterprise solutions because we ended up realizing that clients are willing to go public with public blockchain, but yeah, they need a couple of these features in place too. So again, this is kind of where the whole privacy angle fits in as well.
So this is actually a good time to ask one of the questions that were on Twitter, because we posted this announcement and many people answered us and dropped their questions. And because you talked about all these three solutions, all these three layers, it's very logical to ask what's in Tomo's roadmap for 2021 and 2022. Will it be merging? Will it be helping each other? Will there be more things added? So where are you heading and what's the main focus in here now? Absolutely.
Good question. So there's a lot coming out of TomoChain right now. So for one, we have, so on the DeFi side of things, right, beyond the three protocols I mentioned, we also have an AMM, a swap called Lua Swap, which is similar to Uniswap and SushiSwap. the focus of Lewis swap has been to be a multi-chain swap system. So it can exist across multiple blockchains, not just one. And the reason for this is, this has been also part of our philosophy, and I've been talking about for the last year and a half, is that at the time we called it interoperable, that blockchains will be interoperable to talk to each other. Initially, when we look at blockchains, they've been siloed like ecosystems, right? That aren't able to talk to each other, almost like computers, desktop computers back before the internet, before we had modems, really. They weren't able to talk to each other. The only way of transmitting data has been through exchanges, where you'll send a token to an exchange, you exchange it for another token, then you can exit out into the other blockchain. That's their only real way we've seen it. And recently, though, we're starting to see that multiple chains are starting to build up liquidity and users, and they need to talk to each other. So we've been seeing greater use of bridges, cross-chain bridges across chains, and the ability to easily traverse across these multiple chains. So LewisSwap essentially is sitting to participate within this ecosystem. So we launched LewisSwap on Ethereum at the end of September of last year, and this month we're going to be launching another instance of it on the TomoChain network. So that way what happens is users will be able to go to LewisSwap, and they'll be able to swap their tokens, whether they want to do it on the Ethereum network or on the TomoChain network. And eventually the idea is to allow for even cross-chain swaps, where you can swap a token from one network to the other. That's coming down the road. But that's one of the key things that we're looking at doing. And so we'll be launching that on the 27th of this month. That's one thing. The second thing that we're doing is we have a major government contract that we announced about 2 months ago. I think I haven't heard of any other blockchain being able to do this. We officially partnered with the Vietnam government for a nationwide rollout of the TomoChain public blockchain. So it's not a pilot. What we're doing is we're securing the entire education sector of Vietnam. That means basically focusing specifically on the diplomas which are issued from high school and above. All of these diplomas will be stored on the TomoChain public blockchain. That's the first thing. That's 1.5 million diplomas issued every year across the entire country, securing over 22 million students that are in the education system in Vietnam. The second thing we're doing with this, which is another big story, is that we are essentially consolidating the entire education sector. What that means is into a single system. What that means is that every institution, every graduate from high school or above, and even say employers that these graduates are trying to get employed with, when they're applying to jobs, all these players will need to access a single system. We'll be accessing a single website system that we're developing in order to upload diplomas, access those diplomas, and share those diplomas. And that's incredibly cool. So, and this is really to combat the diploma mill industry, where that just churn out these diplomas that are entirely fraudulent, fake. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. That's and beyond that, Vietnam, after we announced this partnership with the Ministry of Education and Training, which is the ministry that oversees the entire education sector in Vietnam, Vietnam officially stated that their technology initiative moving forward, one of the 5 sectors that they're focusing on, is blockchain. So that was really cool to be there ahead of that announcement. And so what we're going to be doing is rolling out that system in about a month or 2 months, basically. We're rolling out that system. And we're going to be bringing on the initial group of institutions to be uploading their diplomas to it. So that's taking place in a couple of months. And it's really exciting because it's the first real example of actual adoption by a country of a public blockchain to be used across the entire country. Haven't seen anything else quite like it.
This is amazing. And I believe that, do you think that it's probably going to be some kind of a trigger to others to kind of consider it, for other governments, for other kind of regulators, people in ministries and so on, to kind of look into what blockchain can do? So it's not only magic internet money, but it can also be absolutely utilized for such thing as diplomas. So it's not super obvious for all the people who have not encountered blockchain yet, but it's perfectly logical because you put data there and it's immutable, and this is what everybody wants. So do you think it will be some kind of a new wave after Vietnam actually like makes this huge leap for the space?
Absolutely. I think so. For one, when we think about from just an industry standpoint, this is a huge stamp of credibility, not just on blockchain, but actual proper use of it. How can you actually use it and at scale, right? So it gives us, all of us working in this industry, another stamp of that credibility. And what we'll hopefully, my hope is that whether they're using TomoChain or another chain, that I think other governments are going to be looking at this and saying, can we also do this? And how can we do this? It's going to allow for us to be able to also utilize this particular case and to then to be able to hopefully apply it to other parallel industries, as well as potentially other, say, education sectors or working with universities in other countries to be able to utilize a similar setup. Because, hey, if the Vietnam government is willing to use it, then why can't we? That would be the mentality for me, as another institute or another company, another government entity. So I think it's going to open doors. Plus, even for us, this is the first, one ministry we're working with, and if this is successful, which I'm pretty sure it will be, it's also opening doors for the other ministries as well, because it is part of it is the technology advancement. The other part is saying, if one ministry is doing it, we want to also be another ministry. If the other ministry will also want to be innovative as well. So how can we use this as well? How can we use this technology too? And if it's proven with one ministry, then there's less risk to use it with another ministry to secure different sectors. So, for example, the Ministry of Communication is another ministry that we're actually looking at right now that could potentially use this technology. But as with everything, it takes time. I mean, we've been talking with the Ministry of Education and Training, with the Ministry of Technology, basically the entire government. We've been talking with different various ministries for the last 2 years. We were part of their symposium with the Ministry of Justice. We were part of their symposium back in September of 2019, talking about regulation. We've been on calls with them over the course of that period of time from then, before and after. It takes time to get this done, but it's amazing to have it. And I'm sure that this year we are also seeing so many examples of other blockchains and other pilots for things like central bank digital currencies as well. Most recently, I believe it's in the Ukraine, that there's a discussion with Stellar to do an interesting pilot, on that front. And we're seeing more and more interest in this area. And the other thing is, governments around the world, many of them wanted to deny the use of blockchain for so long, but because we as global citizens decided this is what we wanted, it has forced all of our respective governments to say, what, we need to play catch up. We actually need to figure out how we can utilize this technology, and it'll be good for them anyway. And so I think, this year we're going to see a lot more of that. We're going to see, because we have more institutions coming in, we have positive regulatory bodies that are pro blockchain as well in different parts of the world. And it's not something that can be banned. It needs to be adopted. And I think that's the message that's going across right now.
So do you think it's going to become, because my next question was going to be about trends, what do you think are going to be trends in blockchain, in the space in general? We saw a huge trend for DeFi last year. That's still going on, and it's great and amazing, and it had so many projects on it, and everybody seemed to be working on DeFi for a while. Do you think this working with governments and this step up from being consolidated in just the blockchain space, but going out there and kind of going bigger is going to be the new trend?
Yeah. So, blockchain, like again, any other industry, you can tackle commercial, you can tackle government. But I think there are a couple things that are happening here. First, again, with this cycle, as with the last cycle and the cycle before, there is a greater validation for blockchain, Bitcoin, Ethereum, whatever you name it. PayPal's in the picture today, right? And we're seeing regular updates from various institutions that are buying up tens of thousands of Bitcoin at a time, right? And because their clients want to have some exposure to it, these high net worth individuals. So when you have this it's generating far more exposure. So you're going to end up having a greater number of people that will be wanting access and will be purchasing and will be holding crypto. And that's a good thing in terms of, again, adding validation to our space. So we'll see a lot more of that. Within the blockchain space, I think you're going to end up seeing that key players that have been working, trying to generate proper use cases are going to be hitting the mark on that front. So again, for us, it's going to be probably much more on the government side of things and commercial side. We're going to see different examples like I had mentioned earlier. And for other chains, I think it's going to end up being a call to kind of play catch up a bit, because before we didn't have real use cases, real world use cases. It was kind of like we were all saying, here's the vision and let's hopefully get there, and hey, we're going to do it, or we're going to do it. But now there are actual examples. So what that means is that this magic internet money and these mystical projects, they're not just going to be able to form out of the blue with just a white paper or no white paper, legitimate ones. Now we have smarter investors. We have more institutions willing to do their due diligence for investing purposes. So that means a maturation of our industry. So there'll be a creme de la creme of companies that will be actually having, I think, proper investment vehicles coming in for them. And right now we're starting to see, even like a combination of equity and token from large investment groups that are wanting to invest in these individual projects because they see that there's a potential real future, real use case moving forward. So I think we're going to start seeing a bunch of these or a select group of these projects, and I'm putting TomoChain in there, which are going to kind of move to that next level because they already have a proper use case and actually generating more use cases based off of that. And then we're going to see an influx of these middle rung projects, which are probably going to grow really fast because what they're going to be doing, a number of them they're building off of the whole DeFi setup, right? Is amazing because what DeFi did was it essentially solved the problem of what do you do with assets that are sitting idle. That's never been in the traditional finance space. Or in the world that we all typically live in. We have a savings account, even if you're earning 0.1% interest rates or whatever, you have your money parked somewhere. Someone's using your money. But in the case of blockchain, we haven't had that. It's like if my Bitcoin's just sitting there in my wallet idle, or my Ethereum sitting there idle. Now, over the last year and a half, we've seen that there is actually a way to get your capital working. And then pooling these funds together across multiple individuals, no matter how big or small. Now we can take out loans, we can borrow and lend with with platforms like Cream, or Uniswap, SushiSwap allow for quick swapping. UnisSwap does the same thing, right? So there's an easy way of actually utilizing Capital Compound as well. So this is the one layer of it, the idea of pooling your funds together. From there, I think a number of these young projects that are coming up, they're going to then build the next layer on top of that. Now, anyone, any business can have access to millions or billions of dollars of capital. They can borrow it essentially from these decentralized protocols, these decentralized pools. Now, how can you utilize that to build your own business? How can you enable your customers in the real world using these funds? So I think you're going to end up seeing another layer built on top of these Lego blocks. We're going to see much more innovation where we're going to start tapping into the real world from the blockchain world, because now that capital is actually available. Any business can borrow at this point if they want to. We're going to also start to see an easier approach to borrowing capital, because right now the collateral levels are huge. If you want to borrow $100, you have to put it like $200, right? I mean, in a sense of capital to be able to do that. So I think we're going to start to see that those thresholds will be decreasing over the course of time. Things that are considered to be liquidation free, we're starting to see more of these types of projects. And what that does, again, is it'll allow a whole new crop of businesses to be able to actually tap into blockchain liquidity. So I think we're going to start to see a lot of that take place, a lot of acceleration in that area. Then there are things like NFTs and this and that, but I think that DeFi, it's not over yet. There's the next level beyond this initial idea of pooling funds together. We're going to see some real cool stuff coming out of.
Yeah, this is great to hear, because those are some very, very positive prospects for the space. So it will be interesting to check it, develop, and see how it goes, and probably catch up in quite some time and check how it's actually changing. So we're running out of time here, unfortunately. So I would love you to say some last kind of message to everybody who will be watching this interview and reading it, and probably who have used Tomo, who have not used Tomo yet, to everybody out there who are at least interested in cryptocurrency and in blockchain,
Absolutely.
obviously.
So, yeah, I'd be happy to. So, I think right now we're in this massive bull cycle, which is great. The next cycle that we're into right now. So at this point, number one, if you're a trader, don't overtrade, please. It's better just to hold. I think for many people, lost a lot of money in 2017 just because they were overtrading. But if you're interested in blockchain, interested in the utility of it and the value of it and what it can do, especially with TomoChain, it's worth checking out. The thing is, we're not a new project. We've been around for over 2 years. We have a strong team. We have a strong vision. We have proven use cases. So I think those who are looking to invest in smaller projects compared to the big boys out there, but those that are not, that actually have real traction, TomoChain is a very attractive one to participate in, whether as an investor or even, accessing our entire ecosystem of products. We try to make it as seamless as possible. And I think our vision is very strong in that way. And even as a small startup, we've been able to kind of prove and showcase that even with an $8.5 million raise, we can do things that the guys who are worth billions of dollars today, from a market cap standpoint, have yet to even achieve. And I think that this says a lot. And so I think that if you're in this space today as an investor, TomoChain is a good an opportunity. Beyond that, there's so much amazing stuff happening in the space. If you want to work in the space, there are N number of jobs right now, and so it's worthwhile exploring the opportunities today. For those who are willing to learn, willing to work hard, and to participate strongly in the community, there are amazing prospects. So I think for those who are looking to get out of their doldrum of a job, if they're doing 9 to 5, whatever it is, and they want to do something new, plenty of opportunities here. It's just a matter of working hard, and networking is not hard to do that in our space today.
Those are great words. Thank you so much. And I'm just reminding everybody that today we're joined by Kyn from TomoChain, and it was great having you here. It's super pleasant to chat. And I think we'll be wrapping up on this. Thank you very much for everybody who watches this cryptocurrency interview series. And Kyn, I interrupted you again.
No, not at all. No. Thank you for spending time with me today, Maria, and with everybody in your community as well. I really appreciate the time that you spent here on this interview and for listening to it. I hope you've gotten something out of it as well.
Thank you very much, everybody.